Hello BookTube. For the second of the two tags I'm going to be doing today, for Tag Tuesday, I'm going to be doing the spoilers tag, which was created by Gunpowder Fiction Unplot, and I will leave a link to their original video down below. Prompt number 1. What do you consider a spoiler? A spoiler is plot information that reveals a big turn or reveal or change that is fundamentally key to the work being read, that can, for some readers, ruin the experience. Prompt number 2. Does the genre you're reading impact what you consider to be a spoiler? To a degree, I think yes, in the way that I think some genres are harder to spoil than others, or maybe the spoiling is different. So say, for example, nonfiction, except for like true crime or true mystery, I think, yeah, spoiling's not really such a big deal. Whereas for fiction, I think general fiction is maybe a bit more spoiler proof than the so-called genre fiction genres. Although I guess maybe like a character change or a character turn can be deleterious for some readers or ruin the reading effect or reading experience. But definitely the so-called genres, say detective fiction or crime fiction or thriller or romance or science fiction and fantasy. And there, of course, are various ways that spoilers can affect the story, particularly, again, plot information, but also world building information, that sort of thing. Prompt number 3. All the best bits are in the trailer. Sometimes the synopsis can be too detailed. Do you research books prior to reading them, or do you go in blind? I really should do more research, particularly when it comes to general fiction. And we'll talk about that on Friday. But having a little bit of an idea of where the story's going doesn't really bother me. Sometimes I like to go in blind, but I like to have a firmer idea of where the story's going to see if I really want to read it or if it's worth my time. Prompt number 4. Sometimes the introduction or translator's notes can spoil the ending, especially for classics. Has this ever happened to you? Not really. Now, I'm not... I don't care about spoilers. So knowing what happens doesn't really bother me. Except for maybe detective fiction. I think that's one where knowing what happens kind of can ruin the first reading. But, I mean, yeah. The introduction spoiling the whole story, it doesn't really bother me. I mean, it's kind of their jobs to sort of present an interpretation or a number of possible interpretations and talk about the background and all of that. Which, I mean, sometimes you don't really need to read before you read the actual text that you're wanting to read. So sometimes I ignore the introduction, sometimes I'll come back at the end of the reading. It just all depends. Prompt number 5. Name a time somebody spoiled a novel for you. I don't think anybody's ever spoiled a novel or anything for me. I don't think I've ever really been spoiled. Certainly to where it's ruined the story, because I don't care about spoilers. Prompt number 7. No, prompt number 6. Ooh, I almost skipped one. Have you ever spoiled a novel for somebody else? Yes, I would say I probably have. Um, at heart, I'm like, as a literary critic, um, I tend to be more academic. And so for me, there's a certain expectation that any book I'm going to be talking about, I expect you to have already read. So if I'm going to be doing well, not really in a review, but more of an interpretation or something with a text, an interpretation of a text, then I expect you to have already read it. So if information that would be spoilery, is relevant to my argument, then I'm going to spoil. That's just me, and that's probably part of why I don't really do reviews on my channel, because I find I have a hard time sort of resisting that interpretive, spoilerific sort of tendency that I have. Prompt number 7. If spoilers ruin novels, are there some authors or genres you can't reread? No. Just in December, I reread Murder at the Vicarage for the 3rd time, and I enjoyed it as much this time around as I did the first time I read it. And I know who did it, but this time around, rather than trying to figure out who did it, I'm figuring out, okay, how did Agatha Christie sort of settle on who she wanted to be the murderers. Oops. And how she's went about setting them up. When did she decide who her suspects were, and who the main suspects were, who the red herrings are, that sort of thing. So, in a way, I mean, you can always go back. I mean, there are other things to reread for rather than the thrill of the unknown. But I think to a certain extent, like rereading a detective novel, because this really does affect detective novels more so, I think, than most other genres. Or genre like where the story centers on a mystery. I think that revelation, kind of coming back to it, doesn't really work. It's like they're reading for other things. How the author settled on the mystery, how they formed it, they constructed it, that sort of thing. Prompt number 8. When reviewing, are you spoiler free? Does this limit your ability to discuss? Like I said earlier, I spoil to my heart's content. I do try to be spoiler free. But it does make me talking about the book harder, because sometimes those spoilers are key to sort of my interpretation. Particularly since, I'm thinking more of interpretation rather than, say, qualitative reviewing. Prompt number 9. Shoutout. Tell us about 5 channels you enjoy and then tag them. Let's see here. I'm going to shout out Paperback Junky, Doris of All the Books. I don't think she's done this tag yet. Steve Donoghue, Mark Richardson, and the Bookish Bryants. So if you would like to do this tag, consider yourselves tagged. And if you haven't done this tag and you would like to do this tag, consider yourselves tagged as well. So anyway, BookTube, I'm going to sign out for now. And hopefully I'll be able to find the other attack I'm doing. I had a lot of stops today. So anyway, but until tomorrow, thank you, BookTube. Have a great afternoon. Stay safe.